Good morning and welcome to the Fountain Studio celebration. There are so many ways we connect with one another these days. Text, email, voicemail, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Messenger, but sometimes we don't hear about things happening in your life, and we always want permission to share those joys and concerns. So if you let us know what's happening with you and your loved ones, it will help us offer one another the kind of support that the Fountains is known for. It's easy. Just send us a prayer request by leaving a voicemail message at the office or by emailing it to welcome@weputlovefirst.org. You can also go to the link below, tinyurl.com/fountainsconnection, and fill in the online form. If you're not already receiving our weekly Joys and Concerns email and eStreams newsletter, you can sign up on our homepage or let the office know by email or phone and we'll get you signed up. Thanks for staying connected and thanks for being a part of the Fountain's virtual family. From wherever and whenever you're joining us, we're glad you're here.
Let's join together as we get in the Spirit. In the name of our God who shares divinity with us.
In the name of our God who shares humanity with us.
In the name of our God who unsettles and inspires us.
Let us celebrate the presentness of God.
From beginning to each ending, God is within. Human and divine keep blending, God is within. In our coming and our going, in our learning and our knowing, within. When we act with human virtue, God is within. Strive for fine ideals we value, God is within. When we guard and guide each other with compassion, we uncover our true self and we discover God is within. God is within.
Let's affirm the fountain's mission together. As followers of Jesus,
We put love first.
As we enter into this time of quiet and meditation, I trust it'll be a time when you might sense the presentness of the Spirit at work in your heart and mind, and that in taking this moment to center ourselves, we might make space for the Spirit to be at work, stirring us to examine with humility the deepest parts of who we are, our motivations, our fears, and our dreams. When the world is full of uncertainty and turmoil, we especially need to be intentional about being quiet and open to that still small voice, reassuring us, but also nudging us and working on us too. So I invite you to join me wherever and whenever you're experiencing this moment, to take a deep breath and center down. Set aside the chatter in your mind, all the distractions of the day, and simply be still. Breathe deep. Settle in to the here and now. May we sense the Spirit's presence.
Make us one, Lord, make us one. Holy Spirit, make us one. Let your love flow so the world will know we are one in you. Make us one, Lord, make us one. Holy Spirit, make us one. Let your love flow so the world will know we are one in
Gather acknowledging a power, a presence beyond our human words and images, energizing, holding everything in connectedness and relationship, a presence that comes to expression everywhere at all times in the vastness of this universe.
we acknowledge we live and move and have our being in this presence. We rejoice in our conscious awareness of this presence and of our intimate connectedness with it.
We give thanks for all men and women across the centuries who have struggled with words and images to understand this mystery, beyond all words and images, and to understand our relationship with this mystery.
In our daily lives, may our awareness of this mystery guide us as we live in reverence, wonder, connectedness, and hope. This is our prayer.
We offer this time of quiet, bringing our whole selves in the name of the one who taught his first followers to pray the prayer we now sing together.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, now and forever.
Hi, the Fountains is planning a road trip for Southern Arizona. We would like to invite couples and singles to join us for a fun time together March 31st through April 2nd. We'll be traveling to Willcox, Arizona, staying at the Best Western, and we'll be staying in Bisbee at the Copper Queen Hotel. Also, we'll be doing a mine tour of the copper mine there. Bisbee is a great little town for shopping. If you want more information, please contact the church or look at the e-streams or contact me and we'll be glad to give you all the details. We hope you can join us. Thanks.
Every day, the Fountain strives to put love first, both in person and online.
And if you're one of the many regular online viewers, we're grateful for your participation as a digital member.
Every week, you hear about all the many ways you can give electronically to support this online outreach, like using the QR code on the screen, going to give.weputlovefirst.org, or downloading the Vanco mobile app. So when you're on our secure giving site, be sure to look for the line that says Studio Celebration Donation.
A contribution here lets us know you're out there, that the studio is important to you, and that you want to be a part of supporting this growing digital outreach.
So wherever and whenever you're watching, we're glad you're joining us.
Thanks in advance for supporting the studio financially.
None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are says it is right. We got to try to feel for each other and let our neighbors know we care. We got to get the message out loud and clear. Yeah, none of us are free. Well, none of us are free. None of us are free. If one of us is chained, none of us are free. No, none of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. If one of us is chained, none of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. Well, none of us are free. If one of us is chained, none of us are free. So if you just look around you, you're gonna see what I'm saying. Because the world is getting smaller each passing day. It's time to make important changes, and now it's time to realize that the truth is shining right before our eyes. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. If one of us is chained, none of us are free. 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 If one of us is chained, none of us are free. No, none of us are free. None of us are free. No, none of us are free. If one of us is chained, none of us are free.
Praise God from whom all grace flows forth. Praise life, all creatures here on earth. Praise light who guides us on our way. Praise love who formed us day by day.
In today's episode, Jesus has just been baptized in the Jordan and tempted in the desert. Today's passage is Luke's version of what happens next. Jesus heads back to his mom's sofa for a break, but wait, there's more. Mark and Matthew keep it pretty simple. They just say, he taught in the synagogue. But leave it to Luke to make it much longer and more elaborate. A couple of things to keep in mind as you visualize the setting of the story. First, I can't overemphasize how tiny and insignificant a village Nazareth was. Maybe a couple of dozen families of dirt poor subsistence farmers or peasants. Sadly, Luke didn't know this. He conjures up a separate building that he called a synagogue, which was extremely unlikely to have existed. Synagogue just means gathering. So if this episode actually took place, it would have been in a small courtyard or town square. Second, scholars disagree as to whether Jesus could read or write. Mark and Matthew have Jesus simply teaching in the synagogue, no reading. But leave it to the academic Luke to assume that Jesus was a scholar who could read classic Hebrew, which was unlikely for someone of Jesus' upbringing. Finally, Luke gives himself away as A, not being Jewish, and B, being willing to manipulate the facts and having Jesus read stuff from Isaiah that's not really there. That's right. Luke edits Hebrew scripture to his advantage. Since healing the blind is such an important element of Luke's Jesus, Luke has Jesus read that Isaiah proclaims healing the blind as one of the characteristics of the Anointed One. It's convenient for Luke's agenda, but it's not actually in Isaiah. After Jesus reads from the scroll, he takes his seat and announces that Isaiah's prophetic words are fulfilled in his own person. Now, while at first people are intrigued by the possibility, when they actually think about the implications, they get pretty worked up and proceed to run him out of town, which is what happens right after our passage.
Our words of wisdom are from Luke, chapter 4, verses 16 through 20, the Voice version. Jesus eventually came to his hometown, Nazareth, and did there what he had done elsewhere in Galilee, entered the synagogue and stood up to read from the Hebrew scriptures. The synagogue attendant gave him the scroll of the prophet Isaiah, and Jesus unrolled it to the place where Isaiah had written these words.
The Spirit of the Lord, the Eternal One, is on me. Why? Because the Eternal designated me to be his representative to the poor, to preach good news to them. He sent me to tell those who are held captive that they can now be set free, and to tell the blind that they can now see. He sent me to liberate those held down by oppression. In short, the Spirit is upon me to proclaim that now is the time. This is the Jubilee season of the Eternal One's grace.
Jesus rolled up the scroll and returned it to the synagogue attendant. Then he sat down, as a teacher would do, and all in the synagogue focused their attention on Jesus, waiting for him to speak.
Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church.
Thanks be to God.
"10 years ago or so, Jeff Proctor Murphy and I were preaching on this same topic of Ubuntu. On a subsequent Sunday, one of Jeff's musicians came rushing up to him and said, "You won't believe it, but on the way here, I saw a car with the license plate Ubuntu. It was spelled differently, but it was Ubuntu. Can you believe it?" Jeff asked, "Was it a Prius?" "Yeah." "Was it red?" "Yeah." That was David. And here's my license plate. Besides the golden rule license plate making me feel really bad when I cut someone off in traffic, the Ubuntu message gets me stopped in parking lots all the time. I've even had job offers on the spot. People call out to me, "Hey, you write code?" No. "Well, why do you have Ubuntu on your license plate?" So this is when I get to explain to some unsuspecting software engineer that the open source Linux software they know as Ubuntu was funded by a South African entrepreneur. And since Ubuntu is a revolutionary idea that helped defeat apartheid, What better name for open source software, which is developed in public collaborative forums, than I am because we are? You should see their faces when they realize they've just struck up a conversation, not with a fellow programmer, but with a religious fanatic. As they fumble with their keys and start to back away as quickly as possible, it always strikes me that none of them had been curious enough about the strange name of the operating system they love to have gone investigating where its name came from. Ubuntu! I am because we are. Over the last couple of weeks, we've talked about the principle of Ubuntu and how it offers an alternative to the rugged individualism of the West. It celebrates interconnectedness, collaboration, equality, interdependence. Some might try and explain it as some kind of networking or a new communication tool, but it's more about living into a way of being that runs counter to our basic human nature of tribalism and security at all costs. In fact, it's important to note that not everyone in Africa just naturally practices Ubuntu. Another great proponent of Ubuntu, Dr. Michael Battle, points out that the spirit of Ubuntu has yet to influence what he calls some of Africa's tragic heritage. He writes, Africans need to overcome the traditional belief that heaven is reserved for men and embrace the dignity and worth of women as equals. Africa needs to educate its people out of a worldview that depends on magic for change, an ignorance that has made the AIDS crisis even more tragic. And it needs to stop oppressing minorities, be they racial or homosexual or religious. Ubuntu is a work in progress. And because the forces working against it are so primal to the human condition, it has to be constantly shored up and promoted in order to get any traction. It's important to note that while the ancient principle of Ubuntu helped galvanize people in crippling the idea of apartheid, in the final analysis, it wasn't dreams of rainbows and unicorns that finally broke apartheid's grip. What really got the South African government's attention was global economic divestment, cold, hard cash on the nail. As we talked about last week, Ubuntu is the end we have in mind. And in the meantime, real-world pressures and strategies need to be brought to bear in convincing the powers that be that it is to everyone's advantage to leave behind the primitive tribalism and fear of the other and mature as a species. In our passage today, Jesus quotes Luke's version of the prophet Isaiah to people who were oppressed and struggling. He speaks to peasants, people who are huddled in fear and uncertainty, intimidated by the cosmic forces jerking them around, people who are the discarded, broken pieces of empire. And what does Jesus do? He reminds them of their common lot. He promises good news to the poor, release to the captives, sight for the blind, freedom to the oppressed. He simultaneously expands their universe, urging them to see beyond their own problems, and draws people close, saying, we're all in this together. The poor, the oppressed, the blind. Jesus shows them the power that is at the heart of Ubuntu. I am because we are. Look, you say, that sounds all well and good, but just try to suggest it to people as a practical option, right? Yeah, it didn't even go well for Jesus. After suggesting that he was essentially going to turn the world upside down, The people in his own village felt so threatened that they tried to throw him off a cliff. Ubuntu goes counter to most people's comfort zones. It not only says that we are intricately, mysteriously, unavoidably interconnected with one another, but with all of creation too. If you're going along thinking you're going to avoid the effects of climate change because you're somehow not a part of its cause or the solution, you're in for a big surprise. Bishop Tutu said, as scientists understand more and more about the interdependence not only of living things, but of rocks, rivers, the whole of the universe, I am left in awe that I too am a part of this tremendous miracle. Not only am I a part of this pulsating network, but I am an indispensable part. Each of us an indispensable part of the universe. And the sooner we embrace the reality that how we live and what we value has impact on the world at large, the better it will be for all of our futures. But where to start? Most of us can't fathom wrapping our arms around the whole world. Our next door neighbor is irritating enough. Then take that irritation as an opportunity. Khalil Gibran said, I have learned silence from the talkative, toleration from the intolerant, and kindness from the unkind. Every encounter is an opportunity to learn what it's going to take for you to be a part of the solution. Be like Jesus. Look around. Look for those who are left out, hated, or voiceless. Reach out to them. Be there for them. Last week, I was talking with a friend who lives in another state, who was feeling sad about the hostage taking in the Houston synagogue. He said, wow, I'll bet this is a tough time for rabbis dealing with not only their own fear, but the concerns of their congregations, especially in places like my town where it's so predominantly fundamentalist Christian. It must be lonely. I asked him, do you have a local synagogue? Oh, yeah. Well, have you called the rabbi? Who? Me? No. Why not? I'm not Jewish. Who am I in the larger scheme of things? Well, you're a fellow human being concerned for a neighbor. Silence. Then he said, you know what? I'm going to call the synagogue. And even if I don't get the rabbi, I'll just leave a short message of support. That's it, isn't it? Small gestures that say to one another, I'm with you. Do it enough, and pretty soon, people will start to get the sense that they're not alone. The end we have in mind is Ubuntu. If one of us is left out, or threatened, or suffering, the picture's incomplete. Creation is not whole.
Sometimes when I hear the sounds of children playing, my mind wanders back to my time in Africa. I remember there was this once I was playing with a group of children, and I proposed a rather stupid game. I had placed a basket of strawberries under a tree, and I told the children that the first one to find it could keep them all to themselves. But what the kids did in response changed me forever. Instead of running off one by one to find the basket, they held each other's hands and ran together. And when they found the basket, they all shared the fruit. When I asked them why they did that, they told me, Ubuntu, how can one of us be happy if all the other ones are sad?
How can one of us be happy if all the other ones are sad? You may not know the name Emma Lazarus, but you know her words. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Emma wrote these words as part of a poem used to raise money for the construction of the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty. As a Jew, Emma was an activist for Jewish and immigrant causes, and in her own way, promoted the spirit of Ubuntu. In fact, in the 1880s, she wrote, "Until we are all free, none of us are free." 80 years later, Martin Luther King Jr. paraphrased the sentiment with, "No one is free until we are all free," which takes us to our stream of thought that Richard and Donna sang for us earlier. None of us are free if one of us is chained. How can one of us be happy if all the other ones are sad? I am because we are. However you say it, I think the idea of Ubuntu is where Jesus would have us set our sights. But it's slow. It's almost imperceptible. When we practice Ubuntu, we need to be okay with knowing that we may never live to see the fruits of our labor, but are still convinced that the future depends on doing what we can here and now to make I am because we are real in the world. You know, I've been told that it takes 5 years for the seed of a bamboo tree to show any growth above ground. But after 5 years of preparation, putting down roots and spreading out underground, it can grow to 90 feet in 6 weeks. And if you've ever tried to get rid of bamboo, you know that's virtually impossible. So it may appear to the casual observer that nothing is actually happening, but the groundwork for real growth takes place in the unseen depths of hearts and minds. To close, let me share a Marge Piercy reflection I learned from Cantor Shira at Beth Hagivot. It lays out some practical strategies for those of us who, in our own small ways, are working toward making Ubuntu come alive in the world. Connections are made slowly. Sometimes they grow underground. You cannot tell always by looking what is happening. More than half the tree is spread out in the soil under your feet. Penetrate quietly as the earthworm that blows no trumpet. Fight persistently as the creeper that brings down the tree. Spread like the squash plant that overruns the garden. Weave real connections. Create real nodes. Keep tangling and interweaving and taking more in. A thicket and bramble wilderness to the outside, but to us, interconnected with rabbit runs and burrows and layers. Reach out. Keep reaching out. Keep bringing in. For every gardener knows that after the digging, after the planting, after the long season of tending and growth, the harvest comes. Interconnectedness, collaboration, cooperation, compassion, a way of being that fosters humility in oneself and a profound respect for the other. That's Ubuntu. And it's no mystery how it happens. Quietly, among the broken, the discarded, the rejected. Bringing good news to the poor, release to the captives, sight for the blind, freedom to the oppressed. So as long as it takes, may the spirit of Ubuntu continue to draw us out of ourselves and towards creating the future we all know is possible. Be well.
sea and sky. I have heard my people cry, all who dwell in dark and sin, my hand will save. I who made the stars of night, I will make their darkness bright. Who will bear my light to them? Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. I, the Lord of snow and rain, I have borne my people's pain. I have wept for love of them, they turn away. I will break their hearts of stone, give them hearts for love alone. I will speak my word to them. Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. I, the Lord of wind and flame, I will tend the poor and lame. I will set a feast for them, my hand will save. Finest bread I will provide, till their hearts be satisfied. I will give my life to them. Who shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart.
Let us join together in these words of blessing as we go. As the sun in its shining brings glory,
As the stars in the night scatter the dark,
as the moon gives us hope in its radiance,
so may the light of God fill our hearts
and our minds.
and our lives.
Ubuntu!